Hello, my name is Tony Xavier, Chief Learning Officer of IMS, and this is a series of videos called Bell the Cat, which is the name of my book, a companion series of videos to the same. Bell the Cat, your friend, philosopher, and guide for cat prep. These series of videos are purely stress-taking strategy videos. The first video in the series was Think Like a CEO. So if you haven't watched that, first watch that and then come here because it puts things in perspective. In this video, we're going to look at how do you approach the VARC section purely from test-taking strategy. How do you select the passages? How do you allocate the time? And how do you attempt the questions? What is the sequence? Should you do VA first? Should you do RC first? Which VA question type should you do? Right? Let's get started. As usual, the first and most important thing is to look at the data, which is scores and percentiles. So these are the scores and percentiles for the last few years. Now, if you look at the data, it's very, very clear that the first thing you have to do always is clear the cutoff. Usually all colleges have a cutoff of 80. IMB for verbal has always traditionally had a higher cutoff of 85. So for all practical purposes, let's keep the goal at 85. That's the cutoff, right, for the general category. So if you look at it, it's 20 to 25. 20 to 25 questions and marks is how many questions? 8 questions, right? So 8 questions, correct questions attempted, you get 25. And what is a great performance in a section? 95. And for 95, how many questions? About 11 to 12, 30 to 34. So 10 to 11 questions right and you're sorted, correct? This is the thumb rule. To clear the cutoff, 1/3 of the total marks in a section or overall, right? And to have a great performance and to get calls from all the IIMs and stuff, half the total marks and you're sorted. This is a thumb rule. You don't need to know anything more than that. Now, time allocation. How do you allocate the time? How do you allocate your 40 minutes? What do people typically do from students across the years? Out of the 24 questions, 20 to 24, which keeps changing a bit here and there, bulk is RC, right? 4 passages with 16 questions. Give all the time to RC, and then whatever leftover time, give it to VA. Right? So people treat VA like the pan at the end of like a big thali, right? At the end, on your way out, you put a pan in, chew it and spit it out. Now, I don't feel that makes any sense at all for the simple reason. You have 1/3 the questions in VA. Are these 1/3 questions that are coming from VA, are they easier or tougher than RC? Nothing. Any question can be easier or tough. Do they have fewer marks than RC? No. All the questions have 3 marks. If any VA does not carry any negative marking in some cases, does that mean you attempt them casually? No. So if you look at all the questions, any question can be easy, medium, or difficult. So there is absolutely no reason why to do this division. Always divide it in the ratio of questions. So 25 minutes for RC, 15 minutes for VA. That is the ratio. So if you look at the 16 questions in RC, and if you look at the 6 to 8 questions here, that's the division that you're supposed to do. Okay? Now, first target, 85 percentile, you should look at 20 to 25 marks, 50 to 65% accuracy. You're looking at a lower percentile, so lower accuracy is fine. So this is the blueprint for it. You're only going to solve 2 passages. You're not going to attempt 3 or 4 or try to look at easy questions from all passages. That just doesn't work. You'll end up wasting a lot of time and doing things superficially, and your scores will keep fluctuating. Right. Now, 6 to 8 questions, 4 to 5 correct. So 6 to 8 questions, 8 questions. Now, sometimes all the questions need not be easy, so you can leave a couple. So 6 to 8 questions, 4 to 5 correct, 8 to 12 marks. This is what happens in VA. Now, what happens when you look at, say, a 95 percentile is you need 30 to 35 marks. Your accuracy also has to go up from 60 to 75, right? To higher percentile does not only mean, say, more questions. Higher percentile means higher capability. Higher capability always translates into higher accuracy. Right? So RC, 3 passages, 10 to 12 questions, 7 to 8 correct, 18 to 21 marks here, and 15 to 18 marks. This is the blueprint. Don't jump from one to the other. Suppose the next test you go and hit 85, does not mean after that you immediately jump to 95. Consistently, after in 3 mocks, you are able to maintain a particular percentile, then set the next target. Right? Not on 1 mock, because you increase the attempts in the next mock and then you'll find that your accuracy suffers. We've been hearing this for a very, very long time, right? So 3 mocks consistently and then you go for it. Why VA under, so 15 minutes, why is that -5 that I put? I put that -5 because if you're attempting 3 passages, then maybe at times it can take slightly more than 25 minutes. So that's why, yeah. Now, how do you select these passages? There are first itself, we are only going to use one method. So to do this passage rating, your ability to answer RC question depends only on one thing: your understanding of the passage, not the type of question. Sir, what about type of question? Sometimes there are complex questions like which of the following, if, false, lever, inference, this, that. Basically, there can be three kinds of text: easy text, moderate text, extremely difficult or painful text. By text, I mean passage. Now, across the years, question setters can choose to set whatever question types they want. On the easy, they can put a lot of inference questions. On moderate, they can put one kind of question. On difficult, they can put one kind of question type, right? So it doesn't make any sense to go by question types, because based on the content in that specific passage, questions can be made. On some passages, inference questions can be made. Some passages, inference questions cannot be made, right? So there is only one test for that. How easy or tough is the paragraph or the passage? Why is that a best test? Ask yourself what happens on a summary question. Once the text is super tough, nothing is going to happen, right? But students always say, sir, sometimes what happens, I have seen that the passage is tough, for the questions are easy. Now, what you have to understand is you can never base a strategy based on exceptions, right? Like sometimes I've seen that toxic people, some people look toxic, but they turn out to be not toxic. As I said, that's an exception, it's not a rule, right? So always stick by the rule. You are very, very likely to understand a text which is easy to read. The better you understand a text, the higher your chances of answering the questions on it correctly. So if you have to use advanced reasoning on an easy text, you should be able to use that, right? Now, your task is thus to gauge the difficulty of an RC passage by sampling. You can't read the whole passage, you have to do sampling. What is sampling? Read either one paragraph, right? If the paragraph is moderately sized, say 6 to 7 lines. It's a very short paragraph of 3 to 4 lines. Read the first 2 paragraphs. If the second paragraph is very, very long, then just a bit of that, right? So enough for you to get an idea of the passage, right? Usually one paragraph should suffice. In your rating, what do you do? So this thing, some people might say that, sir, what about looking at the questions and then deciding, purely, and then deciding this thing. So that will again, should I not look at the questions at all? Don't look at the questions at all. They are not in your hand. More importantly, does looking at the questions also make any sense? Because what if the question is tricky, but the options are very, very straightforward? Questions in which are the following, if false, is likely to, weaken or whatever. Now, what if the options are fairly easy and you can eliminate 3? So finally, you'll end up reading the whole thing. So don't try to do that. This is the most foolproof method. Now, what do you rate? 3 parameters: language, arguments, topic, right? These are the 3 parameters that we are going to look at: 0 to 3, 0 to 4, 0 to 3. So rating out of 3 for the first one, rating out of 4 for this one, and rating out of 3 for the third one, right? Now, type of language. 3 types of language. First one, everyday language, where you know all the words in the first paragraph. There are absolutely no tough words. You can definitely read it faster than your normal speed and you'll still get the same accuracy. Give it a rating of 3 out of 3. It has magazine language. It has some sort of idiomatic usage which you're not used to. You cannot read it faster than your normal speed. You have to read it at normal speed. It's 2 or a 2.5. Scholarly is very, very tough words, slower than normal. You don't know what's going to happen. Then you have to give it a 0, 1 or a 1.5, right? So that is language. Next thing is type of argument. First type is a descriptive passage. Lots of context providers. Every passage has 3 types of sentences: context providers, supporting ideas, and main ideas, right? Context providers, I've explained this in detail in the book, but to quickly get through it, context providers are only giving background. So if I remove the context providers also, you should be easily able to answer and understand the passage and answer. There usually won't be any question also on the context providers. It's just a background, right? Then you have supporting ideas and arguments. In descriptive passages, there are no arguments. It's purely descriptive. For example, ancient Chinese burial traditions, right? So in such passages, give it a 4. Mildly argumentative. There is only one argument. That too not a major argument, minor argument. You will find some context providers and background, supporting ideas, and a minor argument, right? So give that a 3 or a 3.5. Next, you find that maybe there is a context provider, maybe there is not. But it starts off with supporting arguments and there is one major argument. 2 or a 2.5. Fully argumentative, its first sentence itself is an argument. Maybe a main argument is introduced right at the beginning only. Straight away jumps into it, either a 0 or 1 or a 1.5. Yeah. Next is type of topic. It's either your favorite topic. Nobody needs an invitation, or you don't need an invitation to read this. It's absolutely a favorite topic, or maybe it belongs to your educational background also, right? So you are doing your bachelor's in psychology, and it's a passage based on psychology, for example. So that's a 3. Accessible, it's not a favorite, but you understand what it's said and you don't mind reading it. 2 or a 2.5. Third one, but you read it and you know it that this is exactly the kind that I hate. So it's 0, 1 or 1.5 there, right? Now, all passages rated 7 and above are easy or must attempt, right? Any passage rated 7 and above is an easy and it's a must attempt. So whenever I go across the country taking these sessions, I've seen that while say an individual passage, X% which have rated it 9, X% 8 and X% 7, overall the majority, if it's an easy passage 7 and above, 80% or 70% has rated it 7 and above only. It's rarely happened that the passage is a 7 and only, in my opinion, or that it's a 7, and say 50% of the people have rated it lower than that. Never happens, right? Whatever goes according to the parameters, bulk of the time the population goes into the, not bulk of the time, all the time. All passages rated 6 are moderate. That means could attempt, right? Could, but not necessarily in the first round. All passages rated 5 or lower are difficult. Don't even look at them later. When should you do this rating? You should do this rating right at the beginning of the RC passages, section, at the VARC section. Why should you do that? Because it's exactly going to tell you how difficult or easy the VARC section is in your particular slot. Exactly. Right. Now, usually, what is the standard thing that will happen? What have I seen on average across the years? 2 passages will be easy, which is 7 or above. 1 passage will be moderate, exactly 6. And then 1 passage will be 5 or lower than that. 9 out of 10 times, this is what is going to happen. Right? Or, for example, that is what's going to happen 9 out of 10 times. Right? What is the other alternative that is there? Easy. 3 passages are 7 and above, and only 1 passage is 6 or below. Difficult is only 1 passage is 7 and 3 passages are below 6. There's another setup, right, which is between moderate and difficult. What is that? You have 2 passages, above 7, and then there are 2 passages at 6s, right? So you can play that. There are 2 7s and 2 6s. So that also can happen, right? Or they can be 2 7s and 2 5s also, right? So this keeps on, varying. But if you have only 2, if you have 2 easy passages, that means at the bare minimum, it is a moderate passage, moderate section, right? Now, why this is so important is that suppose you say 3 easy passages, you know that, okay, I have to solve it slightly fast. Right? Because the toppers and others will be 3 easy passages, means they'll cream this and they'll solve the 4 passage also. Right? So you need to know that when there are 3 easy passages, you can't really chill and aram se take it very, very easy. You have to go faster than normal, at least on your highest rated passages. Right? Suppose you know that there is only 1 passage rated 7, or there are 2 7s and the rest 2 are 5s and 4s, then what do you know? You have to really concentrate hard on VA and get those marks from VA. Right? So that's why you should do it right at the beginning. Now, what we'll do is we'll take CAT 2024. We'll take a slot. We'll take all the passages in that slot and do this rating one by one. Right? You look at the passage, pause the video, read the passage and rate it, and then look at my rating for the same. Yeah? Let's start with the first passage. You can pause and take a look at this. Right. In the summer of 2022, subscribers to the US streaming service HBO Max were alarmed to discover that dozens of the platform's offerings had been quietly removed from the service. No tough word. Subscribers found that many of the shows were not there. This news seemed like vindication to those who had long warned that streaming was more about controlling access to the cultural commons than expanding it, as it reports. So straight away, you know that it has a few tough words, and there is an argument also being made. One argument, right? As it reports that Netflix had begun editing episodes of this one. So how would I rate the language? Out of 3, I would definitely not give it a 3. I would maybe give it a 2 or a 2.5 because there are a couple of tough words, vindication and controlling access to the cultural commons, right? In terms of type of argument, it's not a 4. there is an argument for sure, right? There is an argument about, say, the news seemed like vindication, that people who felt that Netflix and all are always going to control access, they have been justified, right? What about topic? I find this topic my favorite, so I will give it a 3. You might give it a lower this thing, right? So language, I gave it a 2.5. You can give it a 2. I gave it a 3 for the type of argument. You can give it a 3 or a 3.5, right? And for topic, if you don't like it, you can give it maybe a 2.5 or 3. But overall, the lowest you would give this is a 7.5. I gave it a 9, right? So when I did this with students also, there are about 500 students. That was the maximum crowd in one particular city. There also, bulk of the people rated it above a 7, right? So minimum is a 7 or a 7.5. Maximum, maybe this can go to a 9. So let's look at the next passage. Pause and rate this passage first. Okay. The idea of craftsmanship is not simply nostalgic. Crafts require distinct skills, an all-round approach to work that involves the whole product rather than individual parts, an attitude that necessitates devotion to the job and a focus on community interest. The concept of craft embodies the human touch and individual judgment, right? It's giving an entire backdrop, or it's defining what craft work is, basically context providing, no argument. Is there any tough word here? No. Is it very, very simple also? No. Somewhere in the middle, right? I read one more paragraph. This is also just a paragraph only, short paragraph, because I want to see where is there an argument or not. Essentially, the crafts concept seems to run against the preponderant ethos of management studies. Even if you don't know preponderant, ignore that and read. Against the ethos of management studies, as academics note, which have long prioritized efficiency and consistency. If it's against efficiency and consistency, against management studies, it's about something else. Crafts have been portrayed as being primitive and traditional. So basically, there is an argument being introduced. Craft work versus management principles, right? That is the argument. There is one argument. Now, how would I rate this? Language, I would give it a 2 or a 2.5, right? Not a 3 because it's not that easy also. Some of you give it a 3, that's absolutely fine, right? Your judgment, there's nothing wrong. Argument, there is one major argument. You know that this passage is going to be about craft work ethos versus management ethos, right? Topic, I like it, so I gave it a 3. You might not like it, but it's not a topic you'd hate, at least a 2.5. So 7.5 to 8.5, that's the rating that most of the students also gave it when I did this. Now let's look at the third passage in the slot. Right. Landing in Australia, the British colonists weren't much impressed with the small-bodied, slender-snouted marsupials called bandicoots. Their muzzle, which is much too long, gives them an air exceedingly stupid, one naturalist noted. They nicknamed one type the zebra rat because of its rump. Now, if you look at it, the language might be tough to read. There are no tough words. It's just that these things are maybe a bit, what you call weird to pronounce. Slender-snouted marsupials called bandicoots and all of that, right? Even after you read the second paragraph, you see that this is completely descriptive about a particular animal and about how it survived harsh conditions. No arguments. It's purely a storytelling about a particular animal in the desert, right? So what's the only thing that is there? So there are no arguments. The language, there are no tough words, only random nouns, right? Which are not comfortable, right? Now, the only thing that remains is whether you like bandicoots or not. I personally don't like, so I would have rated the topic slightly lower, but if you rate it, you can go higher on this, right? So language 2.5 to 3, not really a tough word. Argument, there is absolutely no argument, 3.5 to 4. Topic 2 to 2.5, some people give it a 3. So among the students, when I did this whole sectional rating, this passage was rated the highest. Yeah. The next one, passage 4, economics and other disciplines. Oftentimes, when economists cross borders, they're less interested in learning from others than in invading their guarding plots. Straight away, there is an argument that these people usually do this, right? That's not description. It's saying that they're less interested in this. It's some sort of a supporting idea that is there. And there is also an idiomatic usage. Then in invading their, garden plots, what does invading somebody's garden mean? It's an idiomatic usage. So straight away, this is not going to be an easy read. Gary Becker, for instance, pioneered the idea of human capital. To do so, he famously tackled topics like crime and domesticity, applying methods honed in the study of markets to domains of non-market life. So he took that or whatever. He projected economics outwards into new realms, for example this. At the same time, he did not let others. Now straight away, 1, the language is a bit idiomatic. 2, There are arguments, multiple arguments right in this one. He displayed this, he did this, but he did this not like this, but that at the same time did this, right? So enough and more. And the last sentence, Becker was a picture of the imperial economist in the heyday of the disciplines, brother. Super, not very, very easy for most students to understand, right? So type of language, not very, very easy. Arguments, many. Topic, do you like this? Now, a lot of students rated this high on the topic in some cities because there were a lot of good, economics colleges in the city, like in Delhi and in some other cities. So there, some students rated because of the topic, they rated it pretty high. But I would say 1 to 2, 1 to 2, 1 to 2, somewhere between 3 to 6 is the rating on this one. And all these cities, when I say some cities, some students, so the bulk, 70% rated it 6 or below. Right, but there were still some students who rated it, favorably based on their topic only. Now, if I look at this, this is a particular CAT section of VARC where 3 passages are above 7. Correct? The 3 passages above 7. So, it's fairly easy. People are going to do that bandicoots and craft work very, very well. Now, all that matters is how many you can get right in that streaming, which seems a bit of a tricky sort of a passage, economics to leave, right? So, easy to moderate RC section is what I'd call this. Now, what should be your attempt sequence when you're going to the exam? Not in this particular paper, but in general, right? So, first is sequential and RC first. What does sequential and RC first mean? First 5 minutes, rate your RCs, right? You have a total of 25 minutes. Just because you're already rating it, just now you've rated it and you've read it seriously only, so you remember what is being said. So in that 25 minutes, this also comes in, right? Start, on average, 2 passages rated 7 and above. Solve those 2 passages rated 7 and above. Go to VA. Solve those 15 minutes of VA, get as much as you can from there, then come back, and in that last 5 minutes or whatever is left, right? So when you're starting with 5 minutes and solving 2 RCs rated 7 and above, and you're aiming for a 95, maybe those 2 easy passages you solve in, say, 15 minutes, right? Because 5 minutes you're saving by, you're reading one paragraph there, right? So basically you're doing only 2 passages in the beginning, doing the VA, and coming back for that one tougher passage for the third passages, if it's rated as 6, right? If there is only rating 5 and all, then don't even bother coming back. But one thing can really work, even if you're doing the passage and passage to questions method throughout this thing. For this last passage, when you have 5 minutes, knowing and being comfortable with the para to questions approach for which that I have put up videos, that is absolutely fantastic, because you have 5 minutes, 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs, and you can get 2 questions from there and pull 6 marks out, nothing like it. That's the best way to go right towards the end if you're doing this method. Next one, why not VA first, right? What's the problem? Do the rating and why not VA first, right? So now people might ask, sir, but VA first, why not? A lot of times you don't realize one important thing. How many times have you started a test with RC? First RC, you're reading and 2 things happen. One, you're not understanding what is happening, so you're reading slowly. And even after reading, nothing is going in, so you have to start right at the beginning again. So the test goes off onto a very poor start. The first RC itself takes a lot of time for you to warm up and then go over. It is absolutely normal, it's not your fault, because when the brain is not warmed up at the beginning of a test, to read huge chunks of text is not easy. If I have to take the GMAT and I have to choose which section to go first, despite being exceptionally good at verbal and GMAT verbal especially, I won't look at attempting verbal first. I'll do quant first, because less reading, I'll warm up, work up a nice gentle sweat, and then I'll go to RC or the VA section, right? So start with VA first, 15 minutes, right? Solve all of that. After that, 2 or 3 RCs, depending upon what your goals are, starting from the highest rated to the lowest rated. Right? So this is sequential and VA first. Third approach is alternating. Alternating approach works for students. Some students say that, sir, whatever, my problem is simple. I cannot solve 2 RCs back to back, right? The fuse just goes. So if you have that, do this. 5 minutes at the beginning, rate the RCs, solve the easiest RC, and then solve 1 question type. All questions of 1 question type, right? Whatever is the easiest question type for you, solve that. Then solve, maybe it's a missing sentence in sequence. Then solve the next RC. Then solve the next VA question type, and then come to the end and solve either the RC or the remaining QA. Suppose the remaining third RCs are both, suppose it's a 6. Maybe it makes sense solving that 6. If it's 7, definitely solve that 7, right? If it's a 6, maybe that, or maybe looking at the VA. If it is 5, definitely don't look at solving the RCs, but solving the remaining VA. Yeah. So you're always, that is why rating at the beginning will give you complete control. There are no surprises about the paper. Yeah. VA attempt sequence, what should it be? If you ask me, this is my preferred sequence. Missing sentence and paragraph, I've asked students as well. I've solved all the questions so far that are there. I could only rate one question as moderate. Everything else is an easy question only, because by nature there is no sequencing to be done. The sequence has been given, right? And you only have to put that in. So by nature, it is something which is not very complicated and very, very fast to solve, because you don't need to do sequencing. So attempt all questions, easiest VA question type ever. I've made a separate video on this with the before-after method. Just use that, it's foolproof. Next, summary questions. So summary questions, options are difficult at times, but primarily here, when you read the text, you should attempt only the easy and moderate ones, right? You read the passage. You figure that, okay, nothing is going to my head. Don't even bother reading the options, right? Don't get into the bad habit of, okay, let me somehow see and guess. Why do you think your scores fluctuate? Your scores fluctuate because you've gotten into habitually guessing. Another reason why your scores fluctuate is because irrespective of whether some RCs are tougher this time than in the previous paper award, you are going ahead and always attempting, all the questions. I keep saying this. So irrespective of the relative difficulty, you have chosen to attempt X questions. So in a SimCAT, for example, when our verbal head, he decides in one verbal that, okay, let the kids have fun, I'll make an easy verbal. You go ahead, attempt your 16 questions, and suddenly you see, oh, all my guesses were right, or you don't realize they were guesses, but all your 50-50s went right, grade this thing. In the next SimCAT, he or she decides, okay, this time I'm going to make them cry. They should literally cry. They should wet their shirt. You still go attempt those 16 questions. Now all of those 50-50 cases have gone reverse and your score has gone down. So see what's happening. Irrespective of how the test setter is behaving, you are doing your standard attempt of 16 questions or whatever is that number, which is why the fluctuating this thing. You are not varying your attempts and you're not varying which questions you're attempting based on the relative difficulty level here and there, right? So summary questions also, don't go to the options. If the paragraph is tough, leave that. Second, summary. Jumbled paragraph, I would say it takes time, which is why I don't like to. Maybe you will get a high accuracy, but again, I've given a method for that. Take a look at that. The worst type is incorrect sentence in paragraph. Why? I have given the examples for that in the specific video for that using the labeling method. Now, again, this is my sequence: missing sentence, summary, jumbled paragraphs, and incorrect sentence in paragraph. Right? You need not follow this sequence. You can create your own sequence, but it should be based on results. You should say that, okay, in a SimCAT and an exam situation, I'm getting this right consistently. My highest accuracy on this is on this. I don't need to worry. Okay, so it should not be based on your likes or dislikes. Yeah. So a few notes. Try out new iterations before you what works for you. Right? Maybe you're at 30. But if you try something new, maybe it will go to 35. That new can be trying VA first, right? New can be trying to do alternative. New can be trying to do para 2 questions and that last passage at the end, right? Don't make the mistake of trying a new method only once before rejecting. This is something that people do and our companies also do, right? Any time you're trying something new, right at the beginning, you'll find difficulty because it's impossible that whether it's a para 2 questions approach or a VA to first approach or your bank has launched a new website, all three will make you equally uncomfortable. I've seen it so many times that the new website is better than the old website. But until the old website was there, people were cursing it. The moment the new website comes, people are like, no, this is very, very confusing because anything new takes time, right? And immediately, because of that initial discomfort, people give that up and then go back because the familiar is more comfortable. But remember, if it's mediocre and comfortable, it's useless. No point returning to it. If I look at all the great things in sport, for example, especially team sports, every big revolution or every big discovery of a player has happened because somebody had iterated something. So, for example, if we look at our greatest, one of our greatest batsmen, Sachin Tendulkar, so he didn't start off as an opener in ODI, right? He started off in the middle order for a lot of matches, right? Somebody decided to promote him to the opening position, and that is when the magic happened, right? Similarly, one-day cricket was going on in a very, very routine format when, say, in 1992, New Zealand did it first. But to full effect that strategy of opening with two hitters in the first 15 overs for the power play, Sri Lanka did it in 1996 and won it with sending the wicketkeeper up, Kalwitrana and then Jayasurya. Both of them were going absolutely berserk, right? And we bore the brunt of it also in the semi-final. So if you see, whenever you try out a new combination, that is when some magic gets unlocked. And maybe nothing more than Leo Messi, right? When Guardiola, the coach, decide to deploy him as a false 9 instead of a regular number 10. Those who are football fans will know it. Those who are not, pardon me for getting carried away with my sports example. Sometimes I tend to do that. But yeah, the moral of the story, try out different stuff. That's why we give you 40 mocks for you to try, especially all the take-home mocks. These stunts are not performed by professionals. You should go home and try them yourself. Yeah. Hope this video was useful. Thank you.